I'm a leaner, 32, female, and after years of being the family ATM and emotional punching bag, I took back a nearly $20,000 wedding gift from my sister at her own bridal shower because she decided to humiliate me in front of 50 guests. My story isn't about revenge. It's about the moment the price of admission to my own family finally became too high to pay. For as long as I can remember, my relationship with my younger sister Chloe has been governed by a strange, unwritten set of rules. Rule 1, my success was a resource to be shared, not a personal achievement to be celebrated. Rule 2, her feelings, no matter how irrational or hurtful, were valid, while mine were an overreaction. Rule 3, the most important one, was delivered by my mother Carol whenever conflict arose. Eleanor, you're the older sister. You need to be the bigger person. For decades, I followed these rules. I thought it was the only way to keep the peace, the only way to hold our fragile family unit together. The dynamic was cemented in our late teens. When I was 19 and working two jobs to get through community college, Chloe, then 15, wanted the it bag of the season, a ridiculously priced leather monstrosity. I saved for 3 months to buy it for her birthday. Her response was a lukewarm, "Oh, the color is a little off from the one on the website." There was no hug, just a critical once-over before she tossed it onto her bed. When I looked crestfallen at my mom, she just gave me a small, tight smile and whispered, "She's a teenager, honey. It's just her way." That phrase, "it's just her way," became the soundtrack to my sister's relentless campaign of casual cruelty. It was the excuse for every slight, the balm for every wound she inflicted. I learned to swallow my hurt, to nod and accept that being the bigger person meant being a doormat with a checkbook. The first major test of this unspoken contract came when Chloe turned 21 and needed a car for her final year of university. I had just landed my first significant role as a junior project manager and was finally financially stable. I had my own apartment, a sensible used car, and a growing savings account. Chloe, on the other hand, wanted a brand new convertible. It was completely impractical and far beyond her means as a part-time waitress. "I can't get a loan, Ellie," she'd wailed over the phone. "My credit is non-existent." Our mother called me later that day. "Chloe is so upset, honey. She feels trapped. You know how important appearances are for her confidence." "Mom, a convertible isn't a necessity," I had argued, my voice weak even to my own ears. "She could get a reliable sedan." "But it's what she wants," Mom said, as if that settled the matter. "Eleanor, you're in such a good position. Could you just co-sign for her, just to help her get on her feet?" Against my better judgment, I agreed. I sat in the dealership's stuffy finance office, the scent of cheap air freshener thick in the air, and signed my name next to hers. I laid out a clear budget and payment plan for her. "Chloe, this is serious," I told her, my tone earnest. "Missing even one payment will impact my credit score. It could affect my ability to get a mortgage someday." She rolled her eyes, her shiny lip gloss catching the light. I know, gosh, don't be so dramatic." For 6 months, everything was fine. Then I got a notification from my credit monitoring service. My score had dropped 30 points, a delinquent payment. I called Chloe immediately, my heart pounding with a mix of anger and dread. "Oh, that," she said, her voice casual, like she was talking about the weather. "Yeah, I had to get tickets for that music festival with my friends. I was going to make a double payment next month." "Chloe, we had a deal. You can't just decide not to pay your car loan. It directly affects me." I was almost shouting, something I rarely did. Her voice turned cold. "Well, if you were so worried about your precious credit score, you should have just bought the car for me. If you really cared, you wouldn't have put me in this position." The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, utterly stunned. She had twisted my generosity into a liability, my help into a weapon against me. I called our mother, hoping for an ally, for someone to tell me my anger was justified. "Oh dear," Carol sighed. "She's just not good with money, you know that. It's her way. Don't worry, I'll talk to her. In the meantime, could you just cover this month's payment so it doesn't get any worse, for the sake of peace?" I paid it, and the next month, when Chloe was a little short, I ended up making half the payments on that car over the next 2 years. Chloe never thanked me. In her mind, and by extension my mother's, it was simply what I was supposed to do. The second crack in my resolve appeared a few years later. I had meticulously planned and saved to gift Chloe a 2-week trip to Europe for her college graduation. It was something she'd always dreamed of. I spent months researching affordable hotels in safe neighborhoods, booking train tickets, and creating a detailed itinerary that hit all the cities she wanted to see: Paris, Rome, Barcelona. It wasn't five-star luxury, but it was a thoughtful, incredible gift that cost me a significant portion of my savings. I presented it to her at her graduation dinner. She opened the packet, her eyes scanning the documents. "This is nice," she said, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. During the trip, her social media was a gallery of passive aggression. A picture of her hostel in Paris was captioned, "Cozy, I guess. My friend Madison stayed at the Ritz when she came here." A photo of a pasta dish in Rome read, "Trying the local stuff. Maddie's tour had a private chef." Every post was a subtle or not so subtle jab. She was performing a pantomime of gratitude while ensuring everyone knew this gift was second rate. When she returned, I asked her how it was. "It was okay," she said with a shrug. "A bit of a whirlwind. Honestly, it was more stressful than I thought it would be." Later, I overheard her on the phone with our mother. "It was just so much running around. I barely had time to shop. And the hotels, Ellie tried, but you get what you pay for, you know." My mom saw the look on my face. After Chloe had left the room, she put a hand on my arm. "Don't take it personally, honey. She's just young. She doesn't understand the value of things yet." It was a lovely gesture. A lovely gesture, not a huge sacrifice, not a symbol of my love for her, but a gesture. It felt like she was patting me on the head for trying. The foundation beneath my feet was beginning to feel less like solid ground and more like quicksand. I was sinking, and the hands reaching for me were only pushing me deeper. The final straw before the bridal shower that would change everything was the job interview. By now, I was a senior project manager at a major tech firm. My career was my sanctuary, the one place where my contributions were measured, appreciated, and rewarded based on merit. Chloe, now in her mid-20s, was stringing together part-time gigs as a social media manager, constantly complaining about her lack of serious opportunities. An entry-level marketing coordinator position opened up in my company. It was perfect for her. The pay was excellent, the benefits were top tier, and it was a direct path to a stable career. I polished her resume, coached her on interview questions, and called in a major favor with the head of marketing to get her an interview. "This is a huge deal, Chloe," I stressed. "These people are my colleagues. Please take this seriously." I will," she said impatiently. "I'm not an idiot." She went to the interview. The next day, my colleague, the hiring manager, approached me with a hesitant look. "Hey, Aliner, about your sister," he started, clearly uncomfortable. "She was interesting. She showed up 15 minutes late, seemed completely disengaged, and when I asked her about her 5-year plan, she said she hoped to be married and not working at all. It was odd." I was mortified. I thanked him, my face burning with shame, and fled to my office. I didn't call Chloe. I couldn't. I waited for her to call me to offer some explanation. She never did. A week later, I was at my mom's house for dinner. "So Chloe was telling me about that interview," Mom said, stirring a pot of sauce. "She said it was a bit stuffy. She didn't feel like it was a good fit for her creative spirit." I just stared at her. "Mom, she sabotaged it. She embarrassed me." "Don't be so dramatic, Aliner," she replied, not even looking at me. "She just didn't want a handout from her big sister. You can't blame her for having some pride. It's just her way." There it was again, that phrase, the universal solvent for all of Chloe's toxic behavior. But this time it didn't soothe me. It ignited a cold, hard knot of anger in my stomach. I realized in that moment that my mother wasn't just an enabler, she was the architect of this entire dynamic. She had cast me as the stable, sensible, endlessly giving one, and Chloe as the volatile, creative, endlessly taking one. And she expected me to play my part forever. I drove home that night in silence, the anger solidifying into a quiet resolve. I didn't say anything, I didn't confront them, I just stopped. I stopped offering financial advice, I stopped sending her links to job openings, I stopped trying to solve her problems. I played my part, but I was no longer invested in the play. And then a year later, Chloe got engaged, and the curtain rose on the final act. Chloe's engagement to Mark was announced, as expected, via a meticulously curated Instagram post. A close-up of the ring, a series of professionally taken photos of them laughing in a sun-drenched field, and a caption T. Hat read, "A million times yes to my soulmate." Mark seemed like a decent guy. He was an accountant, stable and kind, and seemed utterly smitten with Chloe. I was genuinely happy for him. For Chloe, I felt a cautious, distant hope that maybe this new chapter would bring a new level of maturity. The wedding planning began almost immediately, and with it, the familiar pressure. The unspoken assumption from both Chloe and my mother was that I would be a significant financial contributor. It wasn't a question of if I would help, but how much. Mark's family is contributing a set amount, my mother told me over the phone one afternoon. Her voice was light, but the message was clear. "And you know, your father and I are on a fixed income since he retired. We'll do what we can for the rehearsal dinner, of course, but for the wedding itself." She let her voice trail off, leaving the rest to me. I knew my role. I was the successful daughter, the one with the disposable income. It was my duty to step up. In the weeks that followed, Chloe would send me links to venues and vendors with heart eye emojis. A historic manor house with a rental fee that made my eyes water, a photographer whose packages started at the price of a small car, a caterer who specialized in avant-garde 10-course tasting menus. There was never a direct ask, just a constant stream of "Isn't this a dream?" and "Imagine getting married here." I tried to have a realistic conversation with her. "Chloe, these are beautiful, but they're incredibly expensive. Do you and Mark have a budget?" "Budgets are so unromantic," she sighed dramatically. "I just want my day to be perfect. Is that too much to ask?" Part of me, the old part, wanted to give in completely. To write a blank check and make all her shallow, materialistic dreams come true, just to avoid the conflict, just to see her happy for a single fleeting moment. But the part of me that had been forged in the fire of the sabotaged interview and the European trip fiasco was more cautious. Still, she was my sister. Despite everything, a deep-seated familial love persisted. I wanted her to have a beautiful wedding. I wanted to be a good sister, so I decided on a compromise. I would not give her cash to spend recklessly. Instead, I would take control of specific major expenses. It felt like the responsible, older sister thing to do. It was a way to be incredibly generous while also protecting myself from her whims. I called the wedding planner Chloe had her heart set on, a chic, efficient woman named Julian. I introduced myself as the bride's sister and explained that I wanted to handle the venue deposit as a gift. Julian was thrilled. We found a stunning, but more reasonably priced vineyard that had a last-minute opening. I put down the non-refundable $7,500 deposit myself. Next, the dress. Chloe was obsessed with a particular bridal boutique that specialized in custom gowns. I knew she'd never be able to afford it on her own. I contacted the boutique and arranged to put a substantial credit on file for her. It was enough to cover their most popular custom design and veil, a total of $6,000. Finally, I wanted to give them something for themselves, a cushion for the honeymoon or to furnish their new apartment. I wrote a personal check for $4,500. All told, it was an $18,000 gift. It was a staggering amount of money, a sum that represented months of hard work and careful saving. But as I assembled everything, I felt a sense of pride. This was a grand gesture, yes, but it was a thoughtful one. It was concrete. It was undeniable proof of my love and support. I bought a beautiful, pearlescent folder and organized everything inside. The signed contract with the venue showing the deposit paid in full, a beautiful calligraphed gift certificate from the bridal boutique outlining the credit, and the check tucked neatly into a pocket. This folder was more than just money, it was a solution, it was peace of mind. It was my way of saying, "I love you and I want you to have a beautiful start to your life with Mark without any financial stress." So, a week before the bridal shower, I had dinner with my mom. I told her what I had planned. Her eyes lit up. "Oh, Alina, that's just wonderful," she gushed. "Chloe will be absolutely thrilled. This will take so much pressure off her." "I hope so," I said quietly. "I just want her to be happy." "Of course she will be," Mom said, patting my hand. You're such a good sister, always the responsible one. She's lucky to have you. Her words should have been comforting, but they landed with a familiar weight. The responsible one. It wasn't a compliment, it was a job description. It was a reminder of my assigned role in our family's ecosystem. Despite that flicker of unease, I allowed myself to feel a spark of optimism. This gift was too big, too thoughtful to be dismissed. There was no way she could belittle this. There was no way she could twist this into anything other than what it was, a profound act of love. This time I thought it would be different. This time she would see. This time I would finally get a genuine thank you. This time I would feel like her sister, not just her benefactor. I carried that fragile hope with me, wrapped in the pearlescent folder, all the way to her bridal shower. I was ready for a new beginning. I had no idea it would be the beginning of the end. The bridal shower was held in the private room of an upscale brunch restaurant, a place with floor-to-ceiling windows and an abundance of fresh flowers. The air hummed with cheerful chatter and the scent of mimosas and pastries. 50 women friends from college, family members, Mark's mother and sisters were all gathered to celebrate Chloe. She was glowing, holding court at the center of the room, a silk bride-to-be sash draped over her trendy white dress. I found my seat at a table with my mom and a few of our older aunts. I clutched the folder in my lap, my palms slightly damp. I felt a nervous flutter in my stomach, the same feeling I got before a major presentation at work. I wanted this to go well. I wanted just for once, for a moment between my sister and me to be simple and good. My mother leaned over, her eyes sparkling. "Are you going to give it to her during the gift opening?" she whispered, nodding toward the folder. "I think so," I replied. "It feels right." "She's going to be so surprised," Mom beamed, squeezing my arm. "Everyone will see what a wonderful, generous sister you are." Her words pricked at my bubble of optimism. Everyone will see. It wasn't about Chloe's happiness, it was about the performance of our family's dynamic. I was to play the part of the benevolent patron and Chloe the grateful recipient. I pushed the thought away. Today wasn't about my baggage, it was about Chloe. After we ate and played a few silly games, Chloe sat in a large, throne-like chair to open her presents. A mountain of beautifully wrapped boxes surrounded her. She opened a set of high-end kitchen knives from an aunt, a luxurious lingerie set from her bridesmaids, and a crystal vase from Mark's mother. With each gift, she offered a perfectly pitched squeal of delight and a dazzling smile. She was playing her part beautifully. Finally, it was my turn. My heart thumped against my ribs as I stood up and walked toward her, the pearlescent folder feeling both heavy and flimsy in my hands. The room quieted, a collective curiosity settling over the guests. My gift wasn't wrapped in a box with a bow, it was different. "Chloe," I began, my voice a little shaky. "I wanted to give you something to help you and Mark start your new life together with a little less stress and a lot more joy." I handed her the folder. She took it, a small, curious smile on her face. She opened the clasp and pulled out the first document, the venue contract. Her eyes widened slightly as she scanned the page, landing on the paid in full stamp next to the $7,500 deposit amount. Next, she saw the gift certificate from the bridal boutique, the elegant script detailing the $6,000 credit for her dream dress. Finally, she slid out the check for $4,500. A hush fell over the room. I saw Mark's mother whisper something to her daughter. My aunts were smiling proudly. I could feel their collective approval. I had done my duty as the successful older sister. I waited, holding my breath for Chloe's reaction. I envisioned tears, a hug, a heartfelt, "Thank you, Ellie. This means the world to me." Instead, a slow, knowing smirk spread across her face. It was a look I knew all too well. It was the same look she'd given me when she criticized the color of the birthday bag, the same look she'd had when talking about the stressful European vacation. It was a look of condescending pity. She looked up from the folder, not at me, but at her audience of friends. She let out a small, theatrical laugh. "Aw," she cooed, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "Still trying to buy love." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. They echoed in the silent room for a moment before a few of her friends, the ones who orbited her like moons, let out a nervous titter of laughter. Then a few more joined in. The sound wasn't cruel, not exactly. It was the light, unthinking laughter of people who assumed this was just part of a sisterly inside joke, a gentle ribbing. But to me, it was like 1,000 tiny needles piercing my skin. My face went numb, the air left my lungs. In that single searing moment, every past hurt, every swallowed insult, every time I had been told to be the bigger person, coalesced into a white-hot point of pain behind my eyes. She hadn't just insulted the gift, she had taken my most sincere, heartfelt gesture and twisted it into a pathetic, desperate attempt to purchase her affection. She had done it in public, turning my love into a punchline for her friends. I stood, th. Air frozen, the laughter washing over me. I glanced at my mother, my silent, desperate plea for help reflected in her eyes. I needed her to say something to defend me, to correct Chloe. Instead, she leaned in close, her hand gripping my arm in a tight, warning squeeze. Her voice was a low, urgent whisper in my ear. Don't be sensitive, she hissed. It's just her way, don't make a scene. And that was it. The snap was not loud, it was silent and deep within me. It was the sound of a lifetime of chains breaking. It was the realization that my mother was not my ally, she was Chloe's warden and I was her prisoner. The price of peace was my dignity, and I had just realized I was no longer willing to pay it. A strange, preternatural calm settled over me. The hurt vanished, replaced by a clarity so sharp it felt like ice in my veins. The room came back into focus. I looked at Chloe, who was still smirking, basking in the glow of her casual cruelty. I reached forward, my hand steady, and gently took the pearlescent folder from her grasp. She looked at me, her smirk faltering for a second, replaced by confusion. What are you doing?" she asked. I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile, it was a small, precise, and utterly final one. You said I was trying to buy love, I said, my voice quiet but carrying in the now silent room. You're right, my mistake, but my money is still mine. I paused, holding her gaze. You have your way, I said, my voice clear and even, and this is mine. I turned, tucked the folder under my arm, and walked out of the restaurant. I didn't look back, I didn't wait for a reaction. Behind me, I left a stunned silence, the ghost of laughter, and the ruins of a relationship I had spent 32 years trying to build. I didn't feel angry, I didn't feel sad. I felt, for the first time in a very long time, completely and utterly free. The walk from the restaurant to my car was surreal. The bright afternoon sun felt strange against my skin, as if I had just emerged from a dark cave where I had been living my entire life. The sounds of the city traffic, distant sirens, people chatting on the sidewalk were muted, secondary to the ringing silence in my own head. I got into my car and sat for a moment, the pearlescent folder sitting on the passenger seat like a trophy from a war I hadn't even known I was fighting until today. There were no tears, there was no rage. There was only a profound and unsettling calm. The decision hadn't been a decision at all, it had been an inevitability, the logical conclusion to a 32-year-long equation. My mother's whispered words, "Don't make a scene," were the final variable that solved it. She wasn't asking me not to make a scene for my sake, she was asking me not to make one for Chloe's. She was asking me to absorb the blow, as always, to protect the person holding the weapon. I started the car and drove home, not on autopilot, but with a new and startling focus. My mind, usually cluttered with work projects, personal to-do lists, and a low-grade hum of anxiety about my family, was now a quiet, orderly space. There was only one project on my agenda today: dismantling the scaffolding of a gift that was never wanted. When I got to my apartment, I didn't pace or pour a drink. I walked directly to my small home office, sat down at my desk, and placed the folder in front of me. I opened it and laid out the three documents: the venue contract, the boutique gift certificate, and the check. It was a triage situation. First, the venue. The $7,500 deposit was non-refundable, but it was paid from my credit card to the wedding planner, Julian, who then paid the venue. My contract was with Julian. I found her number and called. She picked up on the second ring, her voice professionally cheerful. Julian speaking. Hi, Julian, it's Alina, Chloe's sister, I said, my voice steady. Alina, hello, I was so thrilled to hear how you surprised her. What a wonderful gift, Chloe is a lucky girl. I took a deep breath. Actually, that's what I'm calling about. There's been a change of plans. I need to formally retract my financial contribution to the wedding. This includes the deposit for the venue. There was a moment of shocked silence on the other end. I'm sorry, Julian stammered. I don't understand. The deposit has been paid. It's non-refundable from the venue's perspective. I understand that, I said calmly. And I'm not asking you to get it back from them. I'm informing you that the payment I made is no longer a gift for Chloe and Mark. The reservation is now effectively yours to cancel or to have them take over. You will need to contact them immediately for a new form of payment to secure the date. As of this phone call, I am no longer financially involved. But what happened? She asked, her professionalism slipping into pure curiosity. Let's just say the gift was not well received, I replied, offering no further details. I am sorry to put you in an awkward position, but my involvement is over. Please confirm via email that you've received this instruction. Okay, she said, her voice faint. I'll call them now. One down, I hung up and looked at the second document, the $6,000 gift certificate to the bridal boutique. This was simpler. The credit was on my account under my name to be used by Chloe. I called the boutique a chic little shop called Aurelia Bridal. A bubbly young woman answered. Hello, my name is Aliner, I started. I was in last month and set up a credit for my sister, Chloe, to purchase a gown. Oh yes, I remember. The custom design she was looking at is stunning. Has she made a decision? She has not, I said. And I'm calling to cancel that credit effective immediately. Please remove it from my account and issue a refund to my credit card. Oh, is there a problem? No problem at all, I said, a strange lightness in my voice. I've just decided to use the funds for something else. Chloe has not made any purchase or placed any order against the credit, correct? No, her formal consultation is next week. Perfect, I said, then please cancel it. Thank you for your help. Two down, finally the check, the easiest part of all. I picked up the crisp blue piece of paper for $4,500 written in my own hand to Chloe and Mark. I looked at it for a long moment. It represented so many hours of my life, so much work, so much intention. With two quick rips, I tore it into four neat squares and dropped them into the shredder next to my desk. The whirring sound was deeply, profoundly satisfying. I leaned back in my chair. It was done. The entire $18,000 gift had been reclaimed in under 15 minutes. It felt powerful, not in a vengeful way, but in a way that was about self-preservation. I hadn't destroyed anything. I had simply taken back what was mine. I knew the fallout would be coming. It was only a matter of time before Chloe realized her perfect wedding was currently an unfunded mandate. I braced myself. For the first time, I wasn't dreading the confrontation. I was ready for it. The peace in my apartment felt real, earned. It was a silence I had created myself, not one that was imposed upon me, and I was determined to protect it. The silence lasted for 3 hours. It was a tense, quiet bubble that I knew was about to burst with spectacular force. My phone, which had been sitting face down on the kitchen counter, buzzed once, then again and again. It was the first tremor before the earthquake. I walked over and looked at the screen, 3 texts from Mark. The first at 6:15 p.m. read, "Did you cancel the venue? Julian just called Chloe. This has to be a mistake." The second at 6:17 p.m., "Chloe is a mess. What is going on? Call me." The third, a minute later, was just a string of question marks. I didn't reply. I watched as his name was replaced by Chloe, then Mom, then Chloe again. The screen lit up with a barrage of incoming calls I had no intention of answering. It was a digital siege. I put the phone on silent and let it flash, a frantic, impotent beacon on my granite countertop. The main assault came an hour later, a group call. My screen showed the names, Chloe, Mom, they were teaming up. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but I knew they would eventually just show up at my door. This was something that had to be faced. I took a deep breath, steeling myself, and answered, putting the call on speaker. Hello, I said, my voice evened. Eleanor, what did you do? Chloe's voice was a shriek, thin and ragged with tears and fury. It was the voice of a princess whose castle had just been repossessed. I have no idea what you're talking about, I said, my deliberate counterpoint to her hysteria. Don't you play dumb with me, she screamed. The venue, the dress, Julian called me crying. She said you pulled everything. How could you do this to me? You've ruined my wedding. My mother's voice cut in, thick with disappointment. Eleanor, honey, this has gone too far. Your sister is devastated. We thought it was a joke, a momentary lapse in judgment. You need to call those people back right now and fix this. There is nothing to fix, I said plainly. The gift was rescinded, it's that simple. Simple, Chloe screeched. You get up in the middle of my bridal shower, humiliate me in front of all my friends and Mark's family, and steal my wedding away, and you think it's simple. I almost laughed. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of her hypocrisy was a marvel. Humiliate you? Chloe, let's be very clear about what happened today. I gave you a gift of nearly $20,000. A gift that represented months of my hard work and a genuine desire to see you happy. And your response in front of 50 people was to mock me and accuse me of trying to buy love. And it was a joke, she wailed. My friends and I joke like that all the time. You're just so sensitive. You always have to make everything about you. There it was, the classic defense. My feelings weren't valid. They were a symptom of my sensitivity, my selfishness. It wasn't a joke, Chloe. It was the latest in a long, long line of you being cruel and me being expected to absorb it, I said, my voice hardening. This time was just different. This time you did it in public. Eleanor, that's enough, my mother interjected, her tone shifting from disappointed to stern. This is not the time to bring up old history. Your sister is getting married. This is supposed to be the happiest time of her life. You are being incredibly selfish and vindictive. Vindictive, I repeated, the word tasting like ash. Mom, I am not being vindictive. I am simply refusing to continue funding my own mistreatment. For years, both of you have relied on me to be the bigger person, which was just code for being the family doormat. I was expected to pay for everything, fix everything, and tolerate everything, and in return, I was given contempt and disrespect. I started to tick off the examples, not for them, but for myself, to hear them said out loud. I paid for half of your car, Chloe, after you tanked my credit score and told me I should have just bought it for you in the first place. I paid for a trip to Europe that you complained about from start to finish. I got you an interview that you deliberately sabotaged, embarrassing me in my own workplace. And every single time, Mom, you were right there telling me it was just her way and that I needed to be more understanding. There was silence on the other end of the line. I had never spoken to them like this before. I had never laid out the charges so plainly. Finally, Chloe spoke, her voice lower now, laced with a venomous resentment. You've always been like this, holding your money over my head. You think because you have a fancy job you're better than everyone. You think you can just buy your way into being a good person. No, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. That's what you think. You think my money is something you're entitled to. You think my love is something you can take for granted. Today you learned that both have a limit. This is not you, Eleanor, my mother said, trying a different tactic, her voice softening into a manipulative plea. You're a good, kind daughter. You love your sister. Think about the family. Think about what this will do to us. I am thinking about what this has done to me, I countered. I am done being the family shock absorber. The money is gone. The decision is final. You and Chloe and Mark will have to figure out the wedding on your own. My bank account is officially closed. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't want to hear the tears, the threats, or the bargaining. I pressed the red button on my screen, ending the call. The silence that followed was immense. It was the silence of a battlefield after the definitive final shot has been fired. I had not won. I had simply survived. I had walked off the field, leaving them to survey the damage they themselves had caused. The next day, the digital assault continued, but its nature changed. The frantic, hysterical calls from Chloe and my mother ceased, replaced by a wall of icy silence. Instead, my phone buzzed with texts from extended family members. Aunts, cousins, the messages were all variations on a theme clearly orchestrated by my mother. Your mother is heartbroken. Whatever is going on, you need to apologize and fix it for her sake. I can't believe you would do this to your sister over a silly joke. Family is forever. We are all so disappointed in you, Elainer. Each message was a small prick, a reminder that in the family narrative I had already been cast as the villain. The cold, unfeeling, money-obsessed older sister who had ruined the wedding of the sweet, innocent younger one. I read them, deleted them, and felt nothing but a growing sense of detachment. They weren't talking to me, they were talking to a caricature they had created to make sense of a situation that challenged their comfortable world order. Late that afternoon, an unfamiliar number called. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Hello. Evelina, it's Mark. His voice was not angry as it had been in his texts. It was low and tired, defeated. Mark, I said, my guard immediately up. If you're calling to yell at me, you can save your breaths. No, he said quietly, I'm not, I just want to understand. There was a sincerity in his tone that caught me off guard. This wasn't part of the family script, this was something different. What do you want to understand? I asked, my own voice softening slightly. Everything, he sighed. Chloe is inconsolable, your mom is furious. They're telling me you had a psychotic break or something, that you've always been jealous of Chloe and you chose her wedding to lash out. But Anna, I was there, I saw your face after Chloe said what she said. You didn't look jealous, you looked broken. His perception, his use of that word, broken, was like a key turning in a lock I didn't know was there. He had seen past the drama, he had seen the truth of the moment. I wasn't jealous, Mark, I said, and for the first time I felt a tremor in my voice. I was done. And then I told him. I didn't tell him to win him over or to turn him against Chloe. I told him because he had asked and because his genuine confusion seemed to deserve a genuine answer. I told him about the car and my credit score. I told him about the European trip and the passive-aggressive posts. I told him about the job interview I had arranged and how she had deliberately thrown it away. I told him about my mother's constant refrain of "it's just her way," the phrase that gave Chloe a permanent license to be careless and cruel. I spoke for 10 minutes straight, my voice even and factual. I wasn't emotional. I was just reporting the facts, laying out a history he had never been privy to. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing. Wow, he finally said, the words small and heavy. She told me you bought her a car in college. She told me you sent her on a trip. She framed them as these grand, generous things you just did. She never mentioned the other parts. That's because the other parts don't fit the story, I said. The story is that I'm the successful, endlessly giving sister and she's the free-spirited ingenue. The truth is much messier. Her mom backs her up on everything, he said, more to himself than to me. Anytime Chloe gets upset, Carol is right there telling her she's right and the other person is wrong. I know, I said. I've been the other person my whole life. There was another long silence. I could almost hear the cogs turning in his practical, accountant's mind. He was recalculating, reassessing the emotional balance sheet of the family he was about to marry into. So the things she said at the shower, he started, that wasn't a one-time joke. No, I confirmed. It was a pattern. It was the one that finally broke me. He sighed deeply. Okay, he said. Okay, I get it. I don't like it, and this whole situation is a complete disaster, but I get it. Thank you for telling me. You're welcome, Mark, I said. We hung up. I felt a strange sense of relief. I hadn't been seeking validation, but receiving it from an unexpected source felt like a balm on a raw wound. He hadn't promised to fix anything. He hadn't taken my side. He had simply listened. He had acknowledged my reality. In a family built on denial, that single act of acknowledgement was a revolutionary thing. I didn't know what Mark would do with this new information. Maybe it would change nothing. Maybe he would still marry Chloe and spend a lifetime navigating her moods and my mother's enabling. But for him, the curtain had been pulled back. He could no longer claim ignorance, and for me that was enough. My conversation with him wasn't about changing their future, it was about closing a chapter on my past. I had told my story, I had spoken my truth, and now I was free to write a new one. In the week that followed my conversation with Mark, a quiet calm settled. The angry texts stopped. The family pressure ceased. It was as if by explaining myself to one reasonable person, the frantic energy of the entire system had dissipated, unable to sustain itself without a constant source of drama. I didn't hear from Chloe or my mother, and for the first time, the silence didn't feel threatening. It felt peaceful. During that week, I looked at my bank account. The refunded credit from the bridal boutique had appeared. The money I had set aside for the check was still there. Altogether, it was a significant sum, a sum that I had mentally and emotionally written off, designated as the Chloe Fund. Now it was just mine. For years, my goals had been intertwined with my family's needs. Saving for a down payment was also saving for a potential family emergency. My bonus was a resource for a future nephew's college fund or a new roof for my parents. My identity as the responsible one meant my resources were never truly my own. Looking at that number on the screen, I realized I had a choice. I could let it sit there, a monument to a broken relationship, or I could turn it into something else, something for me. I opened my laptop and started searching for flights, not to a resort or a bustling city, but to a place that had always lived in the back of my mind as a someday dream, New Zealand, a place of quiet mountains, vast landscapes, and profound solitude. I found a guided month-long hiking tour that covered both the North and South Islands. It was expensive. It was indulgent. It was something the old Alina never would have allowed herself to do.
Oh, it.
A click, I booked it. Then I booked the flights. I used the money from the wedding gift to pay for the entire thing. The moment the confirmation emails arrived in my inbox, a wave of pure, unadulterated joy washed over me. It was a feeling so foreign and so powerful that it brought tears to my eyes. These weren't tears of sadness or anger, they were tears of liberation. The wedding, I later found out through the family grapevine, was postponed. They cited unforeseen circumstances. I heard whispers that Mark had insisted on premarital counseling, a suggestion that Chloe and my mother had found deeply insulting. Their perfect story had been complicated by a dose of reality, and they didn't know how to cope. Whether they would ever marry, I didn't know, and I found that I didn't particularly care. Their life was their own to navigate. I was busy planning mine. My relationship with my sister and mother is broken, perhaps irreparably. I have not spoken to them since that final, explosive phone call. There may come a day when we can have a civil conversation, but it will only happen if they are willing to see me not as a role they created, but as a person who deserves respect. The price of admission back into my life is no longer money, it is accountability, and I'm not sure they are willing or able to pay it. I leave for my trip in 2 weeks. My apartment is filled with new hiking boots, maps, and guidebooks. For the first time, I am planning a future that revolves entirely around my own hopes and dreams, not my family's expectations and demands. Taking back that folder at the bridal shower was not an act of revenge. It was an act of survival. It was the moment I finally decided to be the bigger person in the truest sense of the word. By respecting myself enough to walk away from a dynamic that was diminishing me. I lost a sister and a mother that day, but I found myself. And it's a trade I would make again in a heartbeat. So I have to ask, was I wrong to take back the gifts and walk away, or was this the only way to finally break a lifelong cycle of emotional and financial manipulation?